Welcome to Gator Aid, an OpinionRoute show to help market research professionals learn and grow. In this podcast, we share stories, insights, and philosophies that unlock enterprise value for the modern market research company. Here's our host, CEO and founder, Terence McCarron.
On this episode of Gator Aid, you get to hear from Scott Stein. Scott joined in late 2024 as our Senior Vice President of Client Development. Scott's been a 20-year industry vet and has a really interesting perspective, both on the current state of quantitative data collection, but also how we got here. Scott and I worked together 20-ish years ago at a company called Greenfield Online. So his joining the company has been a reunion of sorts. And I think on this episode, you'll get a little feel for why he's such a powerful addition for OpinionRoute and helping to drive our sales in 2025. Enjoy. Scott, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
I'm good. It's good to be here.
I'm glad. Appreciate you doing this. So since this is your first time on the podcast, why don't you just give a little bit about your career background in market research and just paint a picture for everyone on your story.
Yeah, it's been a long road. It's been a good road. For sure. And I guess the story, the tale starts with you, right? So a young Scott Stein, a young Terence McCarron, some 20 years ago, started off a company called Greenfield, and it's evolved. It's been exciting, and it's changed so much over these 20 some years that we've grown together. After Greenfield sold to Microsoft, right, you kind of went your way. And I went my way, and you formed a company called OpinionRoute. And I went into the tech startup route, which was modestly good. And I think we've really done a nice job of evolving that whole marketplace. And our paths continued to stay aligned. And then it seems like everything came together this time around, and it worked out perfectly. So in short, my story, but I've been in market research in sales capacity or sales leadership capacity, almost the entire 20 some years. And it's been exciting. I said the tech startup world is where I went, where I chose to go. And I always said I wanted to not be employee number 3, right, Terence? But I didn't want to be employee number 300 either. So I just love that energy right at the 30 to 50 employee range where it's a lot of excitement and the company's growing and, innovating. And we're just figuring it out, trial and error. And so that's where I feel like we're at that very sweet spot here at OpinionRoute. And it's good to be here. So.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things we've always agreed on is I've always had way more fun building something newer. And whether that's a product or position in a market or teams, it's always been the fun part. Right, where you have the opportunity to really put your DNA on decisions and also to adapt in a more agile way, I think, to what the market needs. So I think that's been one of the common threads that's kept us, sort of connected over all these years between these very long gaps between working together. And yes, Scott, you were one of my very early hires when I became a sales leader at Greenfield Online. So you've been as much a part of my success story as hopefully I've been for yours, which has been fun. So
100%. Like we've always stayed together, and there's 2 or 3 people that I always call to for industry knowledge. And I don't know how you're plugged in so well, but you're my go-to as far as industry trending and knowledge and foresight. So it's good to just be working together again for sure.
Yeah, a little more listening than talking, I think, which is very hard for me, but that's part of my secret. So the one thing that I've really enjoyed since you came into OpinionRoute, after years of just observing us both as a vendor, right, but also just an interested observer in the market, but detached from OpinionRoute, is I loved hearing about what you thought we were versus what we actually are now that you're in it every day. So why didn't you kind of start by just sharing what you thought you were walking into, and then you can share what you've learned in your first few months here?
Yeah, I mean, come a long way for sure. I remember the small little office that you had there in Cleveland, and now you've obviously have a lot more space and personnel and everything today. I remember calling on you as a sales rep. and then leadership positions. And I've seen the evolution for sure. I personally, I always thought your secret sauce was about the quality suite. You had a nice tech offering. You had a reputation for being a very intelligent company, very honest, high integrity, right? Doing things for the right reasons, all of that kind of thing. You weren't looking to scale and flip, within 3 years kind of thing. That was never the way you were built out. And I thought it was great, nice company, and I enjoyed your success. Frankly, I learned a lot since I've been here. I've been surprised by a few things. I guess I was most pleased, and I guess what I knew the most about OpinionRoute to begin with was how you were built out. Right, you started with the quality suite, quality layer. Now we call it nav quality, right? And that's where you started. So you built that out for the right reasons. And as we know in our industry, that's not how it's done, right? You build sample, you get revenues, you probably throw it into a source to make sure you start to funding the platforms. You get a valuation, you sell, a 5-year cycle, rinse and repeat. And if you've been in our industry for more than 5-10 years, you've seen this multiple times. That's the formula. And that's not how the way you built it out. You built it out again on the quality charter. Then kind of came sample in after that. And I remember when you started talking about building something internally for your own people, building something that made your own people's life easier, where it gave you alerts and they didn't have to work weekends and Friday evenings. And I remember seeing that demo in your office years and years ago. And that turned out to be Navigator, right? Which is obviously very exciting now. So you built it out again for all the right reasons, the quality charter. Yes, sell sample very well, right? And then now we've layered on with the Navigator. So that's where I've seen kind of the evolution. And the more I look and peel back layers, I've learned. The biggest two surprises, bar none, are just the mounds of data we sit on here. It's unbelievable. I've told you that. I'm shocked. I've always been on the panel side, so I thought I knew, right? But
more fun when you're the giver of the data than the receiver on a vendor side, right?
You know what? That's so true. You see the scoring, and you see companies that I thought really didn't have any offerings, or maybe I pigeonhole them to be a specialty panel or offering. It's just not true, right? Their quality scores are off the chart. They can provide more completes than I thought, and they're responsive and service oriented. All of those kind of things, and I keep telling you, we need to get this information out to the market. I think this is incredibly valuable for the entire market to learn this, because the amount of data we have on not just the panel companies but the panelists themselves is remarkable. And I'm still just kind of drinking out of the fire hose on that. And I would say the second most, and I'm leading the charge and trying to learn more about this. And I'm kind of embarrassed to say that I've spent more time on learning about what quality is and learning about survey plans and survey planning than I ever have in my entire career. So in the last 3 months, I've certainly learned more about what quality means. We have over 800 attributes here on what quality, what flags there are, what it means, how people go into surveys, how they get out of surveys. I didn't know there were 80. So I think it's really exciting to know how far we've built this machine, this offering for the market. Again, it's for the market that we've built this. And so it's very exciting to know, and I'll get better and I'll continue to learn, and we'll continue to evolve, because guess what? There's a lot of smart people that are trying to get in our surveys. And as an industry, we all need to level up and stay on top of it. So those are just some of the things I thought OpinionRoute was. And what I'm shocked now that I've gotten in and seeing what's behind the curtain.
Yeah, it's been fun. I don't know. It's a process of discovery when you bring in an old colleague, an old friend. There was a point where we were learning together and then went different paths, and then you reconnect and come back together. And I'm sure you've had as many moments as I've had where you start realizing, wow, like how could two buddies in the space for this long on parallel paths, assume so many different strongly held views. Mm-hmm. And to me, I think a lot of the data you're talking about has obviously been one of the, key value propositions behind the Navigator. And it's been really, is there a way in the market that we can stop making qualitative decisions on quantitative sample, right? And where people tend to go off track with their vendor relationships is they just believe a vendor's capable of something that they're just not capable of, right? But they ask questions and they get honest answers, but it doesn't translate. So what we wanted to do is validate the trust between the parties, but then add that verification, so that both the vendors and the researchers who are buying the sample can learn. So it's been fun, a little nerve-wracking for me, having you come in and then see that and all that it has with your glasses on, so to speak, and then critically evaluating, does this have value in the market? And I think part of bringing you in was learning from you that it was a wow moment, and that, yeah, wow, this is amazing. So what I'd love to do is sort of pivot into the industry larger, right? The world has changed a lot, as you've said, even in the last 2 to 5 years, really, right? So I would love to hear about, what's your view of the market research industry, the current landscape. Where are the threats? Where are the strengths? Where are the opportunities?
Yeah, well, the industry's evolved a lot, right? First, I feel like we're in good hands. A lot of really sharp, smart people are rising up, starting their own companies, and so that's very, very exciting. But the industry's come such a long, long way, right? Just from online studies, and then we reached scale, so we needed to find new sample sources, so we tried a thing called River, and that was awful. And so and then we started, really sharp people started coming up with programmatic opportunities and solutions and API integrations to connect directly. And there's been a lot of innovations about how we can find more supply and better supply and more higher quality with better responses. We brought mobile. Remember when mobile was now it's an afterthought. Most panels are built a majority via mobile surveys, but that was a big thing back then. And now do-it-yourself platforms are kind of in vogue right now. I think they're great. I think there's a lot of opportunity for different platforms and SaaS-based solutions. The only problem I see, if I'm going to find a hole there, is that there's so many of them. And so I know you get inundated with calls, so do I. And it's just, there's all of them bring 1 or 2, 3 things that are excellent to the table that reinvent what we're trying to do. It's their differentiator. But they're none of the solutions have all-encompassing opportunities to fix all of our problems, all of our day-to-day problems. So what we're doing as an industry is we bring on 2, 3, 4, and we keep just stacking the solutions on top of each other until we Frankenstein this platform, if you will. And even in do-it-yourself, if you bring on 2, 3 different DIY solutions, you lose all the efficiencies because they're all different. You log in differently, you build differently, you pull sample differently, and you have to learn and train each one individually. So although I'm excited about the innovation and a lot that people are bringing in to our market and showing, I like to look at them all because I like to see what's out there. I haven't seen one like all-encompassing solution that really, or maybe does 90% of the work, that will help us really with the efficiencies that it's designed to do. Yeah. So I think the industry has changed for the last 3 to 5 years, right? There's no mistaking COVID really impacted what we did. I saw the rise of like online qual during COVID. I think that was really cool. And they've integrated some AI capabilities on that. I think we've seen the rise of the boutique and the smaller firms. A lot of the big, well-known global brands and MR agencies struggled, right? They got too big. They weren't agile. And you saw them selling off parts and unfortunately laying off a lot of our friends and coworkers, right? Over the years. So now we're coming back to, I think that's settled. I think a lot of the money that was really pouring into our industry 10 years ago, I think it's still on the sidelines to some degree, but I think people are excited now to start reinvesting. So I think that's the state of the union today. I think we've definitely seen the worst of that change coming out of COVID. And I think we're coming out of new innovative ways to reach insights and find new, fresh sources of conversations.
Yeah. I think your point is really well made about the DIY tools in particular. It's it's become apparent to me, at least over the decade, that the DIY tools, the efficiency gains that were promised, were realized, but they were realized on the side of the sample provider, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they saved hours and hours and armies of employees doing bids and, sample teams running projects day to day behind the scenes. So they got all those efficiency gains in a big way. And you're right. Ultimately, the promise of any single DIY tool was that you could do all your buying in one platform, but that's not how it shook out, right? They all just became another vendor that could get you part of the way there, but not all the way. So instead of using those platforms to blend, we used the blending platforms and blended many of them, right? And you're right on the UX was very different, and it was a thing you had to learn. So the reason why I focus on that so much is because it destroyed the labor efficiency on the research side. That combined with the data quality explosion, right, has sabotaged profitability on the researchers. And that's as I know one of the things you really bought into coming in that we want to solve, right? In a new way, thinking about the problem a little more holistically. So yeah, totally validate everything from my perspective on that side. I love talking about that angle too. So I'm glad you brought that up. So as you talk about change, you mentioned on the qual side, the AI element. As a guy that's seen a lot of change and a lot of evolution over the last couple decades, what is your kind of future outlook on the industry, and then overall, like where do you think we fit into it?
Yeah, well, I kind of covered. I won't mention AI more than twice, I promise. But there are some exciting things coming. That is, all the rage at the conferences. Actually, I'm looking forward to learning what it means to other people. But I do think there are some fun things coming out. We already use it, right? We already employ it. People have been using it for different applications for years. I know that there's some experimentation with personas and what that. I know it's not necessarily ready for prime time, but it'll get there. And so there are some exciting things that are coming down that. But I think we know money's tight and we know hiring's tight, and so that has all driven us to do more with less. And so that has really pushed us all to get to have these conversations with the SaaS providers and the platforms. That's really been the leading cause of it. And I guess as an example, right? It's you and I were talking months ago, before I was fortunate enough to come here, and you talked about how like fintech has their own solutions and platforms where, right, for day traders, and healthcare has had it for years. So with scheduling and billing and authorization, they have MyChart, if you're familiar with MyChart. So they have their own capabilities, and legal has case and laws and coach and statutes and more insurance claims, and even automotive, right? Cars and service and parts. And so every category has their own built out platform and solutions to help internally. You kind of mentioned it with a lot of our innovations have been on the panel side. Very, very true. Right. And I've been the beneficiary of that in the past. But now for the first time that I've seen, and I feel like we're actually creating a new market. This is where I feel self plug time, right? I feel like the Navigator is positioned very well to take that solution on for market research, right? We don't have anything for us, right? So I feel like, how can we help with the operational workflows? How can we help with those costs? How can we help with, I would love to hire 3 new project managers, Scott. It's not going to happen. How can I do that? Well, now that's where the Navigator certainly comes in and helps with things like project tracking and scheduling. And I already talked about the vendor scoring, which I absolutely love. I'm like a kid in a candy store when I see all that. And then to me, I've learned kind of a new term of art is the data acceptance rates, right? We preach that around here constantly. And I see, to answer your future question, I feel like that's not going to be our term. I think that's going to be nomenclature across the industry, where everyone's going to say, what is your DAR? What is your data acceptance rate? How did you come to that conclusion? How did you get there? Who did you use? Right? It used to be a day that you would single source a vendor because it was easier, and you would never change. any of your vendor allocation because you were scared of the data blips. Well, now it's changed a lot. Now people weave in multiple different, they blend in all kinds of different vendors. Who's tracking that? Who's watching the change? How do we organically evolve over the course of these tracking studies? And that's where new technologies need to come into play. And that's where I think Navigator's very, very well positioned to help small and mid-sized market research firms to do that. Now, big firms that we talked about, they've had the money, Terence, right? You know that. They've had the money they built their own. They Frankenstein different off-the-shelf offerings and survey scripting tools and all that. And it's great. It's worked well for them. And I don't necessarily see them changing anytime soon. They've built this. And it's tough to change when you've built something like that. But who's been left out over the past decade? And it's definitely small to mid-sized firms that need something for them. And I think that's where we come in and we can offer that.
Yeah. I always think about, and obviously this is the direction I've been guided for years, but I think about like the opportunities that can unlock, right? When you're out of the constant, never-ending email inbox and managing that and the Excel sheets upon Excel sheets. And, when you move out of that into a central place, I think it gets me excited thinking about the opportunities that unlocks, not just for the market research company, but for the industry. I've been so conscious over the decades of how many phenomenal new technologies have sort of entered into the market and they never quite fulfilled the promise that the founders and builders believed it had. And one of my beliefs and conclusions I've drawn just sort of thinking about this over time was that it's because they're a standalone that solves a problem, but there's no ecosystem for them technologically to plug into. And I've always believed the small to mid-sized MR firms are the ones that are the perfect entry point, but they have such a dearth of technology that they're so slow to adapt and trial new things because it would just be another system they have to log into.
Yep.
So for me, I think about all of those startups on the tech side that are solving one problem, but it's a big problem, right? They don't have a market either. So we can be that for them while also creating a different future for the market research firm. So anyway, I remain humbled and appreciative that you believed some part of that idea and that vision, that you want to jump back into the day-to-day lunacy with me. But yeah, I guess leave us with one parting thought. What is the favorite thing that you love every day about your job?
This occurred to me immediately is that I got away from, started with COVID, and I got away from going to see the clients. Offices splintered, contact decision makers went various ways. We all got stuck in Zoom, which is a great tech. It's a great way to do it, but to live in the Zoom box day in and day out is soul sucking. And so I love the fact that we're seeing our industry get back out. Dawn of a new day, right? I've been traveling quite a bit more. Conferences are picking back up. The energy in our industry is going nuts. And it all starts with having breakfast together, having lunch together, talking about the industry. Yep. I just got back from Chicago and Detroit, and I haven't been this energized in years because you just get out from behind the screen. And that's where I'm super excited. And I have a great story to tell. I know when we were going through this whole process, I said, Terence, I just don't want to sell $2 CPIs anymore, right? I feel like a sample can be a commodity, right? I want to sell something that's exciting. I want to sell something that's cutting edge. When I go see these clients again, I want to have a story to tell. I want to have something that helps them, and they believe me, and I do have that. That's all as a humble salesperson can do, is go have something that really helps one of your friends that you've worked with for 2 decades to say, this will solve your problem. And I get to go do it in person. And that's very exciting to me.
Love it. That is the right answer. Scott, it's a privilege and just a pleasure to have you inside. Thank you for your commitment and joining us, and should be a fun next few years together.
Very excited. We're just getting started. Let's do this.
That's right.